Hi, I'm here at the Newport Beach Clinic today. I'm with Ford Gilbert, who's the founder of Trina Healthcare and the developer of the artificial pancreas system. And I'm asking Ford a series of questions about the technology and therapy that he's developed. And so, Ford, we've talked a little bit about your daughter and the great outcome she's had over many years, and talked a little bit about the distinction of this technology. And now I'd like to ask you about really the process of how did you develop this and how did you get an FDA-approved pump and get it to where it is today, which is available for people to actually receive the treatment in a clinic.
Well, it is true. It is FDA cleared, has been for some time now, but the whole development process is very long. There's a common misconception that you can get something in medicine done very quickly, but if you're plowing new ground, it's very long, and the average pharmaceutical drug takes over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I keep feeling sorry for the speed at which we've been able to develop this therapy, because we know how many people it can help and does help. But the reality is that we're probably about normal in terms of speed of bringing it out. Originally, we had to start out, of course, at the time I first got involved, there was not even an idea that physicians could manipulate or change metabolism other than just doing exercise. And that won't do it for resting metabolism, at least not for the diabetic person. So at that time, we had a clue by a doctor going to Northern Ireland and studying, of all things, starvation. And it turns out that the model of a patient who is a diabetic, in other words, the way a diabetic person's metabolism appears, is almost exactly the same as a person who has been starving for 40 days. So a diabetic person is basically starving. Now, we know this for a long time. We've known it for a long time. Why is this? Because when you can't burn carbohydrates, you can't burn sugar, you can't process sugar properly, you have to convert everything to lipids and then use the lipid, or you have to use free fatty acids. Mm-hmm. And it's a very unhealthy type of metabolism if you can't burn sugar. It's supposed to be, carbohydrates are supposed to be our primary fuel. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, the only reason we have lipid is because we store that sugar in a form to be used later, again, as a sugar, and we store it as a fat. So how do you make fat? You make fat from carbs, from sugar, and you store them as fat, and then you have to convert them back into a form of glycogen before you can use it again. So the whole process was not very well known at that time, and what we were doing was we were trying to mimic the way a normal pancreas is getting secretions of insulin. But we thought we couldn't do it because we thought we couldn't give enough insulin into the body to get a high level of insulin in the portal vein to stimulate the liver. We thought if we give too much insulin, we'll drive insulin out of the brain, and the patient, of course, won't survive a lot of insulin. And so we came up with a series of pulses that were designed to have momentarily high concentrations of insulin, trying to add them together to trick the liver into doing its job. Well, it turns out, as luck would have it, that's exactly how a normal pancreas works. A normal pancreas doesn't deliver insulin in a nice, smooth, secretion. Mm-hmm. It delivers insulin in these highly discrete pulses that are 4 to 6 minutes apart. Mm-hmm. And that's all the way that the pancreas delivers insulin to a non-diabetic. Mm-hmm. It took us a long time to develop equipment where we could mimic that sudden start and stop, because as you probably know, infusion devices are designed to be very smooth, and we wanted exactly the opposite. And then we had to get that cleared through the FDA, and then we had to do our clinical trials to show that it works. And another problem that kept us at bay for a while is that diabetes affects everything. Mm-hmm. Your whole body is starving, your whole body is succumbing to this disease. You may have kidney disease before you have heart disease, but you always have all of them to a greater or lesser extent. Mm-hmm. Well, to do the clinical trials on a process that just addresses heart disease is pretty straightforward. But to address clinically and get clinical trials completed on a process that affects the whole body, everything from your skin to your brain and nervous system tissues, takes a lot more work. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say we're a little bit ahead of the game, even though it's been very long that we've been doing this. We've done this for almost 22 years now, and with the earliest people, they all surprised us at how well they got. And frankly, we didn't know how powerful this therapy was going to be. We were doing it, as a matter of fact, when I designed the program, it was just to help my daughter's swings. She had these horrible excursions. I never in my wildest dreams thought that we would affect blood pressure or that we would affect, we would reverse neuropathy. And yet our studies show we get as much as 65% improvement in nerve conduction velocities. Well, who would have imagined that in their wildest dreams? I sure didn't. But that's why it takes so long. It is a long, long process.
Now, just from the scope of this therapy, how many patients have you been involved with in treating over these years?
Oh, well over 2,000, more than 100,000 treatments. And to date, because all we're doing is mimicking the way God made us and giving these pulses exactly as a normal person gets them, and that's why we call it the artificial pancreas system, to date we've never had a single incidence of an adverse reaction.
Yeah,
So that tells you that when you're doing something the way that we were made to do it, and the original design of our body, and it was a design, believe me, the more we find out about it, the more we know this was not an accident, this was a design. And that design is very finite, and you have to play within the rules. If you don't play in the rules, you get adverse reactions.
Yeah.
And so 2,000 more, 100,000 before we've even started these new clinics that we're starting.
Well, that's fantastic. Again,
It's fun.
Thank you for sharing all the details of your development process here.
It's very rewarding.
Thanks.